Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a huge 11-game slate here on DraftKings and FanDuel. This slate is full of injuries. There's a lot of information we're going to have to wait on, including a couple teams that have, I don't know, three or four guys that are questionable or out, including the Clippers and also the Warriors. Um, so we have quite a bit here, so let's get into the injury report. For the injuries, for the Bucks, we have Middleton is doubtful. For the Cavs, Wade is out and Stevens is doubtful. For the 76ers, Maxey is out. For the Bulls, Green is questionable. For the Hawks, Capella is out. For the Celtics, Smart is questionable. For the Warriors, Curry is out. Thompson is out. Wiggins is doubtful. DiVincenzo is questionable. And then everybody else is probable. For the Raptors, Achua and Porter are both out. Trent Jr. is questionable. For the Magic, Wagner is questionable. Carter Jr., Suggs, Okeke, and Harris are all out. For the Mavs, Finney-Smith is out. Keebler is out, and Powell is questionable. For the Timberwolves, Gobert and Anderson are questionable, and then Towns is out. For the Blazers, Nurkic is questionable. For the Thunder, Mann and Robinson Earl are both out. For the Lakers, Davis is out, Reeves is doubtful, LeBron is probable, and Westbrook is questionable. For the Kings, Sabonis and Barnes are both questionable. For the Hornets, Smith Jr. is out and Rozier is doubtful. And for the Clippers, PG-13, Zubac, Jackson, and Powell are all questionable. So we have a ton of injuries, lots to wait on and see. You can jump in and join Discord. We have a thing in here that has NBA news that updates as the news hits Twitter to give us that information. So jump in here and check that out. And obviously you'll get videos and other NBA discussion and stuff here. We have lineup discussion that we're talking about each day. So come check it out. With that said, let's get into the players I do like today. Now, I haven't really included core plays because a lot of the core players are going to come into determination of who ends up being out for the Warriors and also for the Clippers, as well as some other teams. When it comes to the games today, we have 5 games that are pretty high scoring. That's the Bulls and Hawks, Celtics, Pacers, Mavs, Timberwolves, Thunder, Blazers, and Kings, Lakers. And all those games have injury situations that we're going to have to monitor. So I'm just going to give you my best picks for each at each position for now. So Jaden Ivey is a great option here for in the guard position for Detroit. He's been playing pretty solid, a little bit inconsistent, but his price has come down some as a result of that inconsistency. He's getting plenty of minutes, especially in tight games, and I expect him to continue to play well and get good minutes here. He is somewhat scoring dependent because he's not a huge assist guy or rebound guy, but he does have the ability. And with all the injuries and stuff to the Pistons, with Cunningham out, he's got plenty of opportunity here. His price point's a little bit too cheap for his potential, and in the last couple games he's been playing a little bit better, so I think he's back on track. Then Jalen Brunson here for the Knicks against Toronto. This is a semi-tough matchup, but he's been playing really well, and his price is still pretty good for what he's been doing. He's a little bit inconsistent on the season, but he's been getting over 30 minutes most games, and I expect that to continue here and for him to pay off in this matchup. Then Zach LaVine for the Bulls. He's just been playing pretty well lately. He's had a couple inconsistent games, but overall his price point has come down some, which makes him viable on the slate, especially against a fast-paced team like the Hawks. And then Jalen Noel for Minnesota. Now he's been kind of coming off the bench, but as long as Gobert and all those guys are out, he's definitely viable on the slate. He is inconsistent though, so do keep that in mind, and he is scoring dependent, but he is somebody to consider. Then we'll look at Shea Alexander for Oklahoma City. He's been playing extremely well the last 5 or 6 games. He's only had one bad game. His price point is back up over 10,000, but he's been really solid all season long. He is just playing very good, and he's in a nice plus matchup here against Portland, who has nobody that can stop him. Then LaMelo Ball, he keeps getting better game to game as he's getting back into the swing of it. He's had no bad games really since he came back from injury, though his price was a little bit overpriced for a little bit, just due to the minutes. But now he's back in full force. Obviously a tough matchup against the Clippers, but we'll have to wait and see how the Clippers lineup shakes out to see if he's going to be super viable or not. Then for forwards, we're going to look at Eric Gordon here. Now, he has been bad in the last 2 games. He is also very scoring dependent to pay off. but he does get plenty of shot opportunities. It's just a matter of hitting them. And so if he can get back on track, his price has come down enough where it makes him viable. Patrick Williams for Chicago has also been playing really solid. He gets a lot of minutes. He's not a big fantasy guy, so he gets around 20 to 25 fantasy points in a lot of games, and sometimes a little bit below that. But he doesn't really hurt you too much, and he's a good salary saver if you need it. Though I do think we're going to have plenty of salary savers open up as we get more injury news. And then LeBron James, obviously, for the Lakers, assuming he plays today, he is probable. He should get a full complement of minutes, and he should be able to get over 50 fantasy points in this particular game in a nice plus matchup. Al Horford also looks interesting today for Boston. Now, he hasn't been particularly great since he's come back from injury, but he's only had a couple games to get back going, and his price is coming down some, and there might be a couple guys out for the Celtics today, and if that's the case, he'll be viable here. And then DeMar DeRozan for Chicago. He's been playing pretty well most of the season, and his price point has popped up a little bit from its low, but overall he's playing well enough that he is viable on the slate in a nice plus matchup. And then at the center position, we're going to look at Vucevic for the Chicago Bulls. He has been playing really solid lately. He's had a couple off games, but his price point is still a little bit too cheap for what his potential is. And if you believe that he's going to play a full complement of minutes, especially in this game against Atlanta, he's definitely going to be viable here. Thomas Bryant is also interesting, though his price point has come up, so he's no longer a must-play. He's still viable on the slate with Anthony Davis out, and he's getting a full complement of minutes. Mitchell Robinson, I'm also including here because he has been playing really consistent the last 10 games or so. He hasn't really hurt you if you've rostered him. He hadn't had too many games where he blew up. He did have one here against Indiana, but I expect him to play well in this game and continue the streak of just playing solid overall. And then I have to mention Jalen Duren. He's been playing really solid for Detroit as he's been starting. Now this is a tough matchup for him, and his price point is a little bit higher, but I still think he's a good option here. He's been just overplaying his potential, or his price rather, in a lot of these games. And then now I'm going to talk about the Golden State Warriors. I didn't include anybody in my lineup in the plays I just mentioned because I wanted to talk about them as a team. Curry, Wiggins, Thompson are already out. And then Draymond Green, I mean, a lot of times he ends up sitting out this game too on the second half of the back-to-backs. And I sort of expect that to happen, though it's not been determined yet. And then we have a lot of other guys that are questionable or out, like Michael Green, DiVincenzo, and others. Poole is a little bit too expensive today. He's just gotten overpriced, which I'm not surprised at. And that's actually true for a lot of the guys like Looney and Kuminga. They are a little bit overpriced for what they've been doing, even in these games where a lot of guys sit out. And it's pretty much a by-committee approach for the rest of these guys. So you could throw in Moses Moody. He's a viable option today. Tyler Jerome could be interesting as well. Even James Wiseman, especially if, depending on how Kuminga and Looney and if Green is out. So it's just a matter of figuring out what those situations are. Obviously, like DiVincenzo and Green are a little bit overpriced for what they've been doing lately, as well as Looney, who has been pretty solid in some games, but he's been inconsistent lately. So it's kind of a crapshoot here. Not only that, but they're playing Brooklyn, who tends to actually be a decently tough interior defensive team with Claxton. So I don't love the bigs for Golden State in this game. Not only that, but this game might be a blowout. Obviously, I didn't include any Brooklyn players either, because I expect that game to just be a game where after the third quarter, it's going to be a bunch of scrubs playing for both teams. So that's kind of what I looked at for this particular slate here on DraftKings. Let's get over to FanDuel now. Now, I'm not going to abide by the same rules on FanDuel as I did on DraftKings when it comes to the Warriors, because there's really just a couple guys that are viable from the team, but I still think that they have some interesting situations. So let's go and get into the players I do like here. LaMelo Ball, he's been playing really well for Charlotte since he's come back. His price point is still viable here. It's not as ideal as it is on DraftKings, but it's still viable, and so he is in play here. He's probably the best play at point guard. Then Shai Alexander, he's just been playing extremely well the last 5 or 6 games. He's had a couple off games, but for the most part this season, he's been really good. His price point has come up some, but he is viable on the slate. Now, I'm going to mention Kyrie Irving because he's been playing very consistent lately. Now, you do have to realize that this is a game where the Nets are likely to blow out the opposing Warriors without having anybody on the team to play, really. So I think that Irving may not play a full complement of minutes today, but he is viable regardless if you think the game will stay reasonably close. Zach LaVine is also interesting today for Chicago. He's been playing pretty solid lately. His price is still good here on FanDuel, and he's definitely viable in this matchup. Then Bogdanovich from Atlanta. His price point is still pretty good for what he can do. He's had some really good games since he's come back from injury. His minutes are a little bit in flux with some of the other injuries and guys coming back, but he is still viable on the slate, especially with a slate where there's not a ton of great options, value options and stuff like that. DeMar DeRozan looks interesting today against Atlanta. He's been playing really solid most of the season. He's not a guy that typically hurts you too much, but he does have some upside in this matchup. I am going to mention Jonathan Kuminga here for the Warriors because he's one of the cheaper options on the Warriors on the slate, and I think he's viable here, assuming he ends up starting and getting a full complement of minutes. He is very capable with his price point here being reasonable, unlike on DraftKings. Then we'll look at Jaylen Brown, who looks interesting today for Boston. His price point is not super ideal, but he's had some big upside games, and this is an upside matchup for him against Indiana, who's a faster-paced team and doesn't play great defense. Al Horford also looks interesting today for Boston. He's been playing not quite as good the last two games, coming back from injury, but I do think he's going to bounce back in this game and have a really solid one, and he is definitely a viable play here against Indiana, who hasn't had much success against big guys. And then LeBron, assuming he ends up playing today, he's in an interesting spot. He's been playing really well with Davis out, and I expect that to continue, though his price point is not super ideal still over here. Then we're going to look at Onyeka Okongwu for Atlanta. Now his price point has popped up, but he is viable here. He's been playing well with Capella out, and I expect that to continue here. And then finally, Nikola Vucevic. He has been playing really solid for Chicago in most games, and he's got a nice lately, and he's got a nice matchup here against Atlanta where he should have some big time upside. He hasn't had one of his massive rebound games in a little while, so I expect that to I expect this is a situation where he have an opportunity for that, and so we'll see what happens. But I like him here with Capella out and Chicago playing well. So with that said, let's get into my team picks here. So I have the Bucks over the Cavs. I have the 76ers over the Pistons. I have the Bulls over the Hawks. The Celtics over the Pacers. The Nets over the Warriors. The Knicks over the Raptors. The Magic over the Rockets. The Mavs over the Timberwolves. The Thunder over the Blazers. The Kings over the Lakers. And the Hornets over the Clippers. And I will be posting that here on in the NBA discussion here for today on Discord. So come check out Discord if you haven't before. Come check that out. So again, thank you guys for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.